Well, hello and welcome. You find yourself checking out the Meopta Optika6 3-18x50. This one features the MRAD 1 reticle, which was developed by Dark Lord of Optics right here on YouTube. There's a link in the description for his channel below. So there's a ton of great things to talk about with this scope, but I'm going to first talk about a couple of features that you can get for yourself if you want to order something differently. This comes with a 30mm tube and a 50mm front objective. You can order this with a 56mm front objective in either first or second focal plane. This is a first focal plane model, so as we start to increase the magnification, the reticle will get larger to compensate. Speaking of that, why don't we increase the magnification so you can see what I'm talking about. Here, at its maximum magnification of 18x, you get a very beautiful image of this reticle. Reticles are very subjective and very personal. I personally like it. I think it's simple enough to not have you be confused about what's going on, while still making really good use of negative space inside that ring. Everything is very clearly labeled, and in use I found it to be very useful at holdovers at distance. Another thing we can talk about while we're back here is just how much of the scope body you can see. I wish we could see a little bit less, but that's just my personal preference. I bet if this was the 56mm version, we would have much less of the scope body being shown. Another really smart thing that both Dark Lord of Optics and Meopta did was illumination. As you can see, they only illuminated the center dot and the four little crosshairs around it. This is really smart for a couple of reasons. One, it should be a little bit brighter because you're illuminating a smaller area. Two, it doesn't distract you when you're using it. And three, if you're using it in darker environments or at night, it shouldn't mess with your night vision all that well. I don't mean night vision like an actual add-on, I mean your eyes when they get warmed up to the dark. Here in a dark environment, you can see there's very little bleed out and it's nice and sharp. It's beautiful. I also like the fact that Meopta only chose 6 levels of brightness as opposed to 11. It's just too much. This reticle is an absolute home run in my opinion. It works great for my style of shooting. So far, so good. Let's check out the elevation turret, shall we? So as you can see, they sound and feel amazing, but there's one big drawback in my opinion. There's no rev counter. You have no idea how many mils you've turned unless you've counted and memorized it. We've got this as good as we can. You could actually see the mirage in the air from my friend backing his car up from the exhaust coming out of it. That was incredible. Illumination on this thing is fantastic. That is maximum illumination. Go all the way down. 4, 3, 2, 1, and off. And you can see we're lined up really, really closely. Windage looks like it's just hovering on that 0.1 of a click in either direction. So it's as good as it's going to get. So let's give this a whirl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Fantastic. Reset the windage. Perfect 10 mils. Absolutely perfect. Still, in my opinion, extremely sharp, even though we have 10 mils of elevation added to it. Windage is perfect. There you go, a near perfect performance. So as you can clearly see, there's no denying that this $750 optic tracks among one of the best I've ever got my hands on. But let's see how it actually looks in the real world. Here we start out with our 30-yard power transformer like I do on basically every single video I've ever made. Well, at least for the last year or so, because thank you, quarantine and the coronavirus. But you know what? It makes all my videos very consistent, and you can base this scope versus any other scope I've reviewed in that time to one another and see just how they work for you. Minimum magnification here at 3x, and already we have, in my opinion, a stellar looking image. The center of the image is looking really sharp, as does the edge. And this is, yes, only at 3x, but when we zoom in all the way to 18x and we bring up that beautiful MRAD 1 reticle to full size, we focus in that parallax knob till we get basically a crystal clear image. Granted, it takes a little bit of time, but once we get it there, it looks fantastic with only the slightest touch of chromatic aberration picking up on those cables. This is early morning sunlight, so that's to be expected. We back out just below 18x to see if the image quality increases. I think it becomes a touch sharper, but it's super hard to really pick up, if even at all. So far though, the sharpness and the colors look fantastic. We back out the magnification a touch and we go to the top of the pole to see what the wood looks like. I actually really like how this wood looks because there's a lot of really fine detail in there, and if you can pick it up, that only is a testament to the resolution quality of the glass. We bump it back up to full maximum magnification, and we're also going to turn the illumination on to see if it's daytime bright. As you can see, it does change a little bit, but not all that much. Again, this is a very bright sunny morning, so that's to be expected. It's still a pretty damn good performance out of one of these mid-range magnified optics. Mid-range for me is a first number under 5 and a second number under 20, so this 3 to 18 falls directly in line with that. Wood looks fantastic with only the tiniest touch of chromatic aberration coming up on those really high contrast cables. We back out the magnification again just under 18, and the image honestly looks fantastic. I'd also like to point out here that there's a lot of light that comes through this scope. Despite the fact it's only a 30mm tube with only a 50mm front objective, it is super bright to look through. You need sun on a day like today, because if not, you're going to start going blind. Alright, so from 30 yards to about 400, we focus ourselves on this 84-inch or so tall steel door. Got to take use of it while we can, because now that the springtime is coming in, that tree is starting to grow in, and I don't know for how much longer we're going to be able to see it. Alright, so here we are, fully focused as best we can. Illumination is still on full. You can just pick up the red, there you go. And the image does look a little on the fuzzy side, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we can see the air movement. It was an unseasonably hot day on this day when I filmed it, and you can see the boiling mirage. However, I pulled back the magnification to see if that's going to change how good the image looks, and again, I still think it looks a little bit sharper. Yeah, you might say, oh, well, if it's not good at 18x, why even bother with it? Well, we're only at probably about 17x, maybe 16.5, so it's not really terrible. Again, we see that there's very little to no chromatic aberration in this environment, which is odd because it usually creeps up at the very bottom edge of that parapet wall against those windows. Colors and contrast at this magnification also look really good. We bump it up to full magnification so we can pan across the parapet wall. All things considered, I still think this looks good at 18x, though a touch back, I think it does look a little bit better. Panning across the parapet wall picks up a lot of detail, and when we go into this big brown muddled mess of dead trees, we can still make out the larger branches and ones that are at the certain focal point quite easily. We focus our attention at an 800 to 900 yard power tower, and I have to say here at maximum magnification, it looks fantastic. Pulling back the parallax setting to these 30-yard power lines, it looks really good. Pushing it back out, we can get it to look absolutely fantastic. A truly excellent performance. And just look at how sharp it is at the center to the edge. Everything is basically exactly how you'd want it. Sharp, clear, and easy to pick up. There was a little bit of chromatic aberration on those black power cables, but here, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Let's push it back to about 1,000 yards and see how good it looks. Alright, let's get right into this. Zooming all the way into our max magnification of 18x, again, maybe it gets a little bit softer all the way here at the limit, touch of chromatic aberration all the way to the far right, but overall, everything looks pretty sharp and clear. Granted, the trees do look like a little bit more of a muddled mess, but we still see, as you just saw, there's still some miraging going on. Now we add in about 10 mils of elevation to replicate roughly what you'd have to dial up for a 308 at 1,000 yards. It's not perfect, but it's an easy number for me to remember from one scope to the next. I'm very happy to report that when we dial it up 10 mils, as you can see, there is no degradation in image quality, or at least nothing that's easily seen. And it's also really nice to know that the eyebox doesn't shift all that much. There's a touch of shadowing down towards the bottom half of the lens, but that's about it. I backed the magnification out to about 17 or so x like I've been doing throughout this entire video, and the image still looks fantastic. For the price, I feel this is an excellent performance. I've seen worse performances as scopes that cost 2 to 3 times as much. So for this thing to be as good as it is for the price, it's something special. A little later that same day, I decided to go back to the 400-yard steel door just before the sun was about to go over the horizon. I did this because I wanted to see how well it will bring up colors and brightness in dark shadows. Zoom all the way into maximum magnification, illumination is on full, and we get this thing as focused as we can. Despite the fact there's a ton of boiling mirage right now, the colors seem pretty good and the shadows seem to be pretty visible. This scope really does let in a lot of light, and I didn't film a segment showcasing this thing in evening or dusk hours, but there will be more footage of this coming up soon, I can assure you of that. Okie dokie, so let's take this to this scope's natural habitat, or at least its natural habitat for me, the 50-yard line at my local range. At 3x, there is very little to no distortion. Fisheye, warping at the ends, it's excellent. Sharpness, like I've been saying, from center to edge, is phenomenal throughout any magnification. It is beautiful. Colors, contrast, brightness here are all stellar. Zoom into its maximum magnification of 18x to see how well it'll pick up little 22LR holes at 50 yards. My friend N is going to be shooting 2 groups to the bottom right hand targets. You can see his other groups at the top over there. It was a pretty windy day, and testing different ammunitions is fairly inconsistent with 22LR if you are familiar with it, but very easy to spot your own misses, your own hits, your own groups. 50 yards is phenomenal. You don't need much more than this. Here, 9mm at 18x, you can see that donut fits that 5-inch bull perfectly, and this is one of the reasons why I really like it. That bull gets you on target super fast. It's great for practical shooting. It's not a bench rest reticle necessarily, but it's excellent for the style of practical shooting I do. Eyebox here at 3x is very forgiving. You can really be pushed forward onto it and still be able to look through it with ease, or you can be backed away from it and still be able to look through it. So if you're shooting from positional at 3x, it is excellent. Zooming it into 8x here, and you can see once you're set up behind it, you have a little bit of leeway forwards and backwards where you can still fairly see through it, but it's a typical performance of any sort of these mid-range magnified optics at its mid-magnification. The same can be said at its max magnification here at 18x. Once you're on it, but any sort of deviation forwards, backwards, left, right, up, down, whatever, it is going to take away a lot from what you can see. Once you have a good cheek weld though, at least you're good. Alrighty, so let's push back our distance a little bit. Here we are at the large bore range, and this goes everything from 100, where you can see the paper right in front of us, out to about 320 yards on steel. Illumination is on maximum, and this day was very overcast, so the colors and everything are going to seem a little bit muted compared to how they've been so far, but the illumination is going to be much more visible than it's been the entire video. Up there in the woods are our 320-yard steel targets, which we will be spending more time with soon. But for right now, let's get this thing on 100-yard paper and see how it looks. With that center dot, it's very easy to get you on the target very quickly. I really love what the Dark Lord did here developing that donut. It's the perfect size to be able to pick up at minimum magnification, and here at maximum magnification, it's not too big or obtrusive. I absolutely love it. I pull the parallax back to its minimum, which I believe is 15 yards. We scroll through that bush really quick, onto the paper. You can see a little splash coming up from the left from someone missing, and there's your 100-yard paper target at 18x. A touch of chromatic aberration coming up at the very top edge of the target and around the bottom edge of the bull, but being a hazy day like this, I've noticed that whenever it's hazy out, it seems to really dramatize how much chromatic aberration you can see. Zooming out a little bit makes panning across the berm to find steel targets a breeze. Unfortunately, I only did it for that one. Illumination, you can see, is much brighter here than it has been throughout most of the other videos, primarily because, again, like I've said, it's a very overcast day today. Nice little shot there, kicked up a big plume of dust, but I'm not going to stop there for long because I want to see if this thing will pick up the splash from a 22LR at about 180 yards. Keep on panning across until I find this nice little piece of steel right here, and I decide to settle down and aim my sights on my 457. I believe I still had my Gen 1 Razor HD 5-20 on this, and honestly, with a 457 with good ammunition, it makes hits on this of an absolute breeze. You can easily see the splash kicking up from the bullet impacting the steel. Maybe one miss right there, wind was blowing the wrong way. But as far as it being able to show you everything you're going to need to know as far as bullet impact at this distance on a 22LR, it's a joke. I really, again, love this reticle. That donut makes focusing in on a target like that, finding your center so much easier. Another example is right here at 200. You get on the bull, you zoom in, and boom, you're on target. Know how easy it is to read the ring numbers from here. 18x scope at 200 yards, and those numbers are as easy to read as you'd ever need or possibly want. Perfect. A little bit more chromatic aberration at the top edge of the paper, but overall, not bad. We pan across the 200-yard line to find that, again, there's no distortion whatsoever, and everything from those bushes up close to the targets at 200 seem really clear and sharp. We find these steel targets at the far edge of 200, and I decide to line up my 457 for a few more shots at them. There are a multitude of targets here, and I switch up shooting between the top, the bottom, and the far left. You can see the top target ever so slightly wiggle back, or the left target swings pretty good when you shoot it like right now. I know you guys miss it a lot of times, so I'm just going to do pew pew and hit the bottom plate. Because yes, I know my mid-range and higher magnification scopes don't have pew pews in them at whatsoever. One day I will incorporate more pew pews into all of my videos, but for right now you just got to deal with pew pew as I hit steel targets with my 22 at 200 yards. But again, here, the resolution and the sharpness of this glass is all that you'll ever need for something like that. But how about at 320 yards when we're shooting at small steel plates off into the woods? Well, we're about to find out. I estimate these steel targets to be roughly around 8 to 10 inches wide by about 12 to 14 inches tall. We're going to be primarily shooting at the target to the right with my 22LR. Hang time for a round is about 2 seconds or so it takes a while for it to really impact. As far as any splash goes, when we miss, just keep an eye out in the berm behind it. But from what we can gather here, I zoom in obviously in post a little bit, so there's going to be a little bit of blurring around it in digital, but you could see to the post to the far left, just left of that, we have a small 3 or 4 inch gong, which I've showcased before. The chain is very easily visible, with a touch of chromatic aberration on the top steel tube. Image clarity on this thing really does blow my mind. For the price, even if it was double the price, I would say, you know what, it's really good. I've had some other scopes, both the same magnification or more, that don't compete as good as this thing does. It's an absolute home run and is quickly becoming one of my favorite all-time mid-magnified scopes of all time. This last segment, I'm going to let you guys just listen to a little bit of ambiance before we get into my final thoughts.
I'm going to keep this real short and sweet. What we have here is my new favorite budget-oriented mid-range magnified optic. Before it went to the PST Gen 2 3-15, but I think this edges it out as far as sharpness, clarity, and overall functionality. Now, there is a little bit of personal preference there, but this thing is that good. If you couldn't tell from this video, it punches well above its weight class. I've said it in the video, there are some scopes that are 2-3 times the price of this that I still don't think look as good. And that's saying something. There's only one slight gripe I have about it, and that was already brought up. When you unlock the elevation turret and you go past one full rotation, there's no way to know if you're at 0, 10, or 20. That's the only thing that I've found out that I don't really care for. Everything else is as good as you could ever expect. You want a 56mm front objective? You can get it. First focal plane? You have it here. You want a second focal plane? You can get that as well. Both turrets capped, both turrets exposed? You got it. Reticles? You can pick and choose for days. I personally really like this MRAD 1 reticle that was developed by Dark Lord of Optics. It works excellent for my style of shooting in a practical environment. However, you can still use it with that really fine center dot and crosshair for precision shooting. The donut is the perfect size, and I really wish more manufacturers would start implementing something like that into their lineup. I really like the donut on the Burris RT6 that I had reviewed many years ago because it just made getting on target that much easier and faster. This thing is also very, very light. As you can see here, it comes in at about 31.2 ounces. Now compare that to the scope's main competitor, the PST Gen 2 3-15x44. It is a little bit heavier, but you also get a 50mm front objective versus a 44, and it's already got that really nice cool throw lever, whereas opposed to with the PST Gen 2, you have to buy an aftermarket solution. Now, I've already said that this new Optika6 3-18 is my new favorite mid-range budget optic, but where does that leave the Gen 2 PST? Now, I do think that this is still a very good option, but the prices on these have come up a little bit. These two are around the exact same price right now, and that's really going to matter to your personal preference. Do you want an elevation knob that actually has some sort of count for when you go up and an exposed windage? Maybe you need a slightly smaller objective. Maybe you prefer one of the reticle choices over the other. That's really up to you. But don't worry, because these two are officially going to be going head-to-head in my first versus video. Well, actually, second versus video. The first one was between two primary arms magnifiers, but that video didn't do so well. Hopefully this battle will do a little bit better, because for around the same price, you can get either one of these. I think ultimately it's going to come down to personal preference, but I do think that the Meopta is going to edge out the PST a little bit in the glass department. Anyway, that video will probably be coming out sooner than you think. And this video is already way too long, so I'm going to cut it loose right here. For around $750 or so, this is an absolute buy. If you're curious about it, just go ahead and do it, because I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Anyway, that's all for right now. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.
And a very huge thank you to all of my Patreon providers. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to help support the channel but don't want to join my Patreon, I completely understand. But you can still help support by using my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks again for watching.